Hey, hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Chastity. Here we talk about beauty, entertainment, celebrities, books, movies, animes, and kind of anything else that garners my attention this week. Before we get into the video, let's get into the makeup. I'm using on my eyes a new palette that I got that I will talk about more in my haul video. But I got the Carnival 3 Love Tahiti palette from Be Perfect. This palette, I'm gonna hold all my opinions until the haul, and there's a lot of drama that surrounded me getting this palette. Like, a lot happened in the getting of this, but this is the palette. Please listen. Okay, I said no big palettes, but I needed this, so I have it now. Listen, I go against my words. I contradict myself. Let's move past that. So today we are going to be talking about the drama surrounding Trisha Paytas and Nikita Dragun. You know, two human garbage cans, and we're going to use that drama to kind of segue to a bigger point and something that I've touched on this channel but have not fully delved into, which we will do here today. So this all kind of kicked up around Nikita Dragun's Snapchat reality show. I think it's called Unfiltered, which I had no clue that like Snapchat has like actual shows. Interesting. Didn't know. I okay. Listen, we're trying to make content to keep people on the dying app. I get it. Do what you gotta do as a company. But so, Nikita Dragun had posted on her Instagram story, "Cancel me as many times as you want. My show is still running. Hashtag Nikita Unfiltered Season 2. Again, didn't know there was a Season 1, but you know. And I really don't. It's really interesting to me. Like, 'cause Nikita Dragun kind of lives in this world where she's done so much that she is uncancelable, which I absolutely hate. It's a fear of mine of a person I don't like can get to the point of being uncancelable. And Nikita Dragun and Trisha Paytas are two people who've just done so much that they can't be canceled. Also, I want to briefly talk about the fact that like Nikita Dragun gets canceled for like not wearing a mask while we're in the middle of a panini. Um, she gets canceled for, you know, one day being as white as snow and the next day being my skin color. She's been canceled for, you know, cultural appropriation, wearing do-rags and box braids and locks, and then going to try to educate black people on these things. Like, these are the reasons, and also these are things that have happened in the span of a year and a half. So these are things she's done recently, and these are the reasons why Nikita is being canceled. No one's canceling Nikita because, you know, she didn't say excuse me while passing them. Like, she's actually done things. Also, like, Nikita is presently friends with like 3 people who've been exposed for texting minors and or receiving sexual messages and such from underage people. So again, she's being canceled for real things, not just for stupid, petty, like, you don't like me reason. It's like, no, you're continuing to do things and they progressively get worse. So Def News on Twitter had posted about it, and Trisha had quote tweeted and said on Snapchat laughing emoji, which is, yeah, because Snapchat is for sure a dying app. I don't particularly know many people who still like actively like use, like, especially use Snapchat in the ways to like, well, Maya James Charles, but who uses Snapchat and uses the other functions besides like maybe like talking to your friends and like using the filters to take pictures and leave, but like actually like watching like the shows and stuff like that. Like, I personally don't do that. I don't think any of my friends do. I know some people really do still like Snapchat for some reason, but again, it is a dying app. Every other app is pretty much taking the template of Snapchat, built on it, and are some doing better than Snapchat. And so, like, again, having a Snapchat like reality show isn't like this thing to really brag about because it's Snapchat. If like Instagram gave you your own show, or Twitter, maybe if like, I guess maybe Clubhouse is popping right now, so they gave you something to do, but like, it's Snapchat. Nikita then responds, 30 million viewers and a billboard on Sunset. But anyways, let me get back to filming my Netflix show. 2 things. 30 million, I black 2 numbers on that one because I refuse to believe there are 30 million congruent people on Snapchat at any time of the day. 30 million on Snapchat, it seemed like a stretch. I don't think Nikita Dragun has enough fans for that, period. And also, like, Snap. Some congruent people on Snapchat, 30 million. I don't know about that one. But also, like, Netflix shows Netflix shows live in two extremes, either extremely good or extremely trash. There's really no middle ground, like on other streaming services who have a good mixture of good and bad, but even their bad shows don't quite hit how terrible Netflix shows can be. That's a personal thing. I think a bad Netflix show is worse than any other show. Like a bad Hulu show, it still leaps and bounds better than a bad Netflix show. And you can argue with your mama about that one. And then Nikita goes on to tweet, Trisha, haven't you done enough for the trans community? There's no need to downplay mine or any trans women's accomplishments. Happy Trans Day visibility at Trisha Paytas. So what Nikita is referring to is there was a time where Trisha Paytas at one point thought she was trans. She has since forth came out as non-binary, which, again, figuring out your gender expression when you are not just cisgendered is very difficult. I'm not going, again, I feel like it's my place to say that it was wrong for her to come to that conclusion before coming out as non-binary. I am cisgendered. I've never thought of myself as any other gender, so I don't know that struggle, that internal struggle of trying to figure out where you fit. And as well, as you're in this community, you kind of figure out which labels work with you, and you might use one label early on in your discovery, and then a few years later you use something completely different. That is something that does happen, because there's other genders and other sexualities are not wildly spoken about and they're not taught. We don't really, you have to do a lot of research yourself. So again, it is very common for people to, whether it's misgender themselves or possibly use the wrong sexuality while they're figuring themselves out. That I simply can't speak on. I can just give you that. But like whether she was right or wrong to do that, I have no place to say that. If there are any trans people who are subscribed to me and you want to sound off on this whole dichotomy of trying to figure out your sexuality, and the, because as people we like to be labeled, so maybe you hastily picking a label and then later being like, you know what, I thought I was this but now I'm this. If you guys want to speak about that in the comment section below, feel free to sound off. All right, but yeah, that's basically what had happened. And this tweet is where I start to have an issue with Nikita and kind of the point of this video, the weaponizing of her being trans, because at no point did Trisha bring up the fact that you're trans. So I don't really know why you brought it up. Like, it's like, it'd be one thing if like Trisha misgendered you, Trisha said you only get these opportunities because you're trans, then I completely get it. But it was just like a very much so, Trisha don't like you. So if you do want anything that she feel like she could poke fun at you for, she gonna poke fun at you for that. Then Dustin Daly had tweeted, I love you, Nikita, but let's not act like you don't change your skin tone every other week. You're just as problematic. Nikita then tweets that, completely disregards his entire tweet. I love it, to deflect. I love when people deflect. I love it. I simply do. And she tweeted, downplaying or mocking the success of a trans woman is incredibly toxic for the community. Countless women, men, and non-conforming people have paved the way for someone like me. So a small win like a show on Snapchat that's watched by millions is huge. This isn't about me. Now, is what she said true? Yes, trans people get downplayed all the time. Is it true in this situation? No. No, babes. Trisha don't like you, sis. Like, again, no one is downplaying you because you're trans. Like, that's not what's happening here. And then she also tweeted, trans people have been pushed to the side since the dawn of time, never getting acknowledged or rewarded for the impact we have had on society as a whole. We are here. We have always been here. Human to the core. This is not a choice. Hashtag Trans Day visibility. Again, this is very much so true, but this does not apply to this situation. I think that Nikita has deluded herself into believing that we don't like her because she's trans. And that's the farthest thing from the truth. I think that Nikita being trans is the most admirable thing about her. That is the only thing people don't critique her for, is her being trans. I feel like out of all of the very public and visible trans people, Nikita's transness is actually brought up the least. We don't talk, I really don't feel like people talk about Nikita being a trans woman at all, if ever. Like, I feel like this is how she's trying to cope with how everything's happening. Like, I feel like she does not believe she's problematic, and she does not view her issues as bad. And it's just like, they hate me because I'm trans. No, I feel like people of, okay, so this is what we're talking about in the video, is people weaponizing their identities. Nikita is not the first person to do this, but this is probably the most blatant, most public display of somebody weaponizing their identities. And again, before I really get into this video, I'm lying. There's definitely people who don't like Nikita because she's trans. But I feel like that is a minority to the rest of us who don't like her for her actions. Like, again, it is the consistent blackfishing. And her trying to use the fact that she's Filipino. Because, yes, Filipino people can be dark. Not as dark as me. They can't be, a Naomi Campbell skin tone. They can't be, brown like me. But they can be very dark for Asian people, right? She uses that to be as dark-skinned as I am. And then the next day, wash it off. Nikita Dragun, again, runs around in do-rags and box braids and locks. She also, again, we're in a Panasonic, and she is going to parties and hanging out with no mask on. That is a problem. That is an issue. As well as she is friends with 3 people who've been exposed for texting minors. Which, before I get into the big part of this video, I don't like the fact that when 2 people are going at it, if like Trisha, Nikita. Trisha is very problematic. Extremely problematic. But she has since forth acknowledged these behaviors and has not repeated any of these behaviors since then, which is showing growth. And I feel like if we've seen someone who's problematic and they are growing from their past actions that they've already taken accountability for and already apologized for, we should not be throwing those things back in their face when they do something we don't like, especially if those things are not connected to those previous behaviors. It'd be one thing if the things that Trisha was doing connects back to those old things. Because at one point, Keemstar jumps in, which if Keemstar's on your side, you on the wrong side of everything. So, and he was bringing up Trisha's past, and Nikita was bringing up Trisha's past. And it's like, bringing up someone's past actions when they're talking about your present actions does not give what you think it does. Because was Trisha extremely problematic in the past? Will I never be a fan of Trisha? Of course not. Because but I will never throw those actions back in Trisha's face, but she will always not be a content creator that I want to be a part of. But I'll never throw that shit back in her face. And again, past actions, which she has taken accountability for and have apologized for. So I feel like if you're going to do cancel culture and accountability culture properly, we have to let shit die if the person is not presently exhibiting those same behaviors. And Trisha is not exhibiting those same behaviors. Now, Miss Dragun, you are presently problematic. You are presently not wearing masks. You are presently changing shades of white to dark brown weekly. Like, just last year, wearing do-rags and box braids and XY. Like, these are things that, like, in the past 2 years, you've done it and are being clocked for. It's not giving what you think it does when you bring up what someone's done 10 years ago, while they're bringing up what you did 2 weeks ago. But to my point of weaponizing identities, this is something we briefly talked about in my For Harriet video when she was responding to people who were attacking her. And one of those people being a smaller Twitter user who was trans, and their response being you're attacking a trans person with your big platform. You being trans was never part of the conversation. That's like me saying that it is impossible for non-black people to critique me because I'm a black woman. That's unfair because I do things. I'm a little messy, as we all are. We all do things, right? So if non-black people, as long as it's not racially charged and racially motivated, and the thing is, we know when they are. That's the crazy part. Y'all know exactly when someone's being transphobic or not, and someone's being racist, someone's being, misogynistic, and whatever is. But when you don't want to face accountability for your actions, you throw your identity and being like, they're attacking me because I'm X, Y, and Z. And that's rarely, again, sometimes it is the case, but usually it's the case when they bring it up. Okay, if no one's bringing up that you're trans, the likelihood of their issues with you being trans-based is pretty low. The same way, like, I get into it with people on Twitter all the time. I don't believe, for the most part, that people argue with me solely because I'm a black woman. I be saying shit. I simply do, and they have the right to respond to me. I can't be like, well, the only people who can respond to me are black women. No. That'd be a perfect world. But that's not how we live. Because it is true that some people don't like you because of your identities. That's 100% true. But that does not mean that every act of criticism towards you is based on your identity. That's not always true. All right? Sometimes people just don't like you. And you being trans, your race or ethnicity being what it is, your gender, sexuality, sometimes don't even come into play. They don't like you on a human level. You as a person, they simply don't like. And that's why they critique you. Because it's so strange when people do this, where people feel like you can't talk to them because they're these things. And it's like, so you're just above critique. No person is above critique. It does not matter what gender you are, what sexuality you are, what race you are. If you are a human being and you are doing things that are problematic, you should be held to task the same way. If we're disagreeing with each other, I'm disagreeing with you because your points are stupid. I'm never disagreeing with you because of your race or sexual orientation, gender. That don't simply matter to me. If I don't like you, I don't like you. And you using your identity to weaponize it against people, to stop people from criticizing you, it actually does a disservice for your identity. Because I, as a black woman, don't feel like I deserve special treatment. I feel like I should just be treated like a human being. I want to be treated like a person. I want to be given the respect a person deserves. And with that respect comes criticism. I will never feel like I'm above criticism because I'm a black woman. Never. And I feel like you kind of want special treatment. People who weaponize their identities want special treatment. And I feel like that goes against everything we've all been fighting for equality. Like, that negates equality because you feel like people only talk nice to you. Like, no. Because people do this a lot where they get spicy with people and then be like, well, you can't talk to me like that because I'm XYZ. No. You are not above critique because you are these things. As long as the critiques are not based on your identity, you should be fine. Because Nikita was acting like Trisha said, you only got the Snapchat show because you're trans. Her trans identity was never brought up. But you see, when Dustin Daly was like, you changed skin tones, she brought being trans to completely scapegoat his actual point. Because she doesn't want to talk about it. So she's using her identity to kind of shield herself, protect herself, to be like, I'm a trans woman, we go through so much. And that is true. And you can still get this work. Like, the two things can't be true. You can't be a trans woman, you can also be a terrible human being. There are horrible people who are trans the same way there are horrible people who are cisgender. Identity does not stop people from being bad people. Identities do not stop people from being problematic. These things are not mutually exclusive. You can be trans and be a terrible individual. You can be non-binary and be a terrible individual. You can be gay, lesbian, bi, pansexual, whatever, and still be a terrible human being. These things don't negate the other. Okay? And it just, I hate when people do this. Because this is what happened. This is why people speak about the LGBT community, call them, the Rainbow Coalition. Because when you simply try to have a conversation with specific people that don't want to be held accountable in these communities, they bring up their identities as a way to like deflect everything. And then you give the other people way too much ammo. Like, do you see these people? They're just so sensitive. They make everything about X, Y, Z. When there are legitimate times where people hate you because of your race, because of your gender, because of your sexuality. There are legitimate times where that is true. But when you do things like this, just weaponizing your identity, it pushes down the real situations where your identity does come into play with how you're being treated. Okay? Again, because I'm not going to say that not everything's about race, not everything's about gender. That's not true. That is 100% not true. But there are legitimate times where you've done something wrong and you're simply being held to task. And honestly, you should feel good about that. Like, no one is babying you because of your identity. As someone who lives in multiple different intersections, I don't want to be treated differently. I want to be treated equally. Look, I don't want special treatment. I just simply want to be able to live my life the way everyone else can. I'm not trying to be treated differently. I just want to live. Okay? I want to live. I want to exist. I want to one day have children and not worry about what could possibly happen to them when they walk out my front door, because I have no control over that, because I gave them this. Like, these are the things I'm worried about, the things I want. I just want to be treated like a person. I will never weaponize my identity because someone doesn't agree with me. Now, if they're disagreeing with me, it's seeped in racism and microaggressions. Yes, of course I'm gonna bring that up. But the thing is, y'all know the difference, but you just don't want to be held accountable, and that in itself is a problem. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Again, like the whole Trisha and like Nikita Dragun thing, that was stupid and really unnecessary. And I really only briefly talked about it in the beginning because they went on back and forth for hours. I simply don't care enough about either of these trash individuals to like really follow it, but I did really want to talk about Nikita weaponizing her trans identity to kind of deflect any criticism, because I hate when people do that. As someone who lives in multiple intersections, I don't like when I see people do that. Accept the criticism. Again, you can always tell when someone's criticism is just seeped in bigotry. But there are some times where people are just like, girl, you done fucked up. So, what did you guys think of this situation? What do you guys feel about people who weaponize their identities? Do you think it's okay? Do you think it's wrong? If anybody who's watching this is trans, what do you think about maybe one day, or non-binary, stuff like that, who you maybe one day identify as one thing, and then as you learn about yourself and research, you change your labels? What do y'all think about that? And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye, guys.